Nebuchadnezzar, one of the four most powerful rulers in history frequently mentioned in sources, was the king of Babylon.
Imagine this: 75,000 people living behind the world's strongest walls. 18 months later, only 10,000 survived. This wasn't an earthquake or plague. This was war strategy so brutal, it's still studied by military experts today. One king didn't just conquer Jerusalem, he erased it from existence using a method so calculated, so devastatingly efficient, that it transformed destruction into an exact science. The Strategic Mastermind. Most conquerors relied on brute force. Nebuchadnezzar, he was different. The Babylonian king commanded 180,000 soldiers, but his real weapon wasn't numbers, it was his brain. While other armies charged blindly at city walls, Nebuchadnezzar studied, he analyzed, he planned. His war machines were technological marvels that struck fear into enemies before battles even began. Catapults hurled 200-pound stones across distances of 600 feet. Battering rams weighing more than 20 oxen smashed through bronze gates like twigs. Siege towers rose 100 feet high, taller than 10-story buildings, allowing archers to rain death from above. But here's what made Nebuchadnezzar truly terrifying. He never improvised. Every attack followed a tested manual. Nineveh, Ashkelon, Lachish, dozens of cities fell using identical methods. The king had transformed warfare from chaos into predictable science. The surprising target. Why would the world's most powerful empire waste time on tiny Jerusalem? The answer lies in geography and politics. Jerusalem sat directly on the trade route between Babylon and Egypt, the two superpowers of the ancient world. Whoever controlled Jerusalem controlled continental commerce. More importantly, Jerusalem was allied with Egypt, Babylon's greatest enemy. For Nebuchadnezzar, allowing this alliance meant having a dagger pointed at his back. Jerusalem wasn't just another city, it was a strategic threat that had to be eliminated. There was also pride involved. While other kings trembled at Nebuchadnezzar's name, the Jews claimed their God was stronger than any army. This infuriated the Babylonian ruler. Destroying Jerusalem wasn't just military strategy, it was a demonstration to the entire world that no city, regardless of divine protection, could challenge Babylon. The psychological warfare begins. In 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar arrived at Jerusalem's gates, but instead of attacking, he smiled. His offer seemed generous. Give me some noble young men to educate in Babylon, and I'll leave your city alone. King Jehoiakim accepted immediately. It seemed like an excellent deal, save the entire city by surrendering just a few teenagers. Among those taken were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Jerusalem's brightest minds. Jehoiakim thought he'd outsmarted the Babylonian king, but Nebuchadnezzar was playing a deeper game. He wasn't just taking hostages, he was stealing Jerusalem's future. By removing the most intelligent youth, he ensured the next generation of leaders would be raised in Babylon, not Judah. The psychological masterstroke worked perfectly. By accepting this deal, Jehoiakim had declared himself Nebuchadnezzar's vassal. Jerusalem had lost its independence without realizing it. The first blow wasn't military, it was mental. The fatal mistake. 3 years later, Jehoiakim made the error that would bring Nebuchadnezzar back with vengeance. He rebelled against Babylon, thinking he could break free. His son Jehoiachin inherited this disaster, lasting only 3 months on the throne. In March 597 BC, Nebuchadnezzar returned personally with his complete army. This time, there was no negotiation. The 18-year-old king looked from Jerusalem's walls and saw soldiers stretching to the horizon. What happened next was unprecedented in Jerusalem's history. After just 3 days of siege, Jehoiachin did something no Jerusalem king had ever done. He opened the gates and surrendered voluntarily. The strategy of progressive intimidation had completely broken Jerusalem's morale. Fear accomplished more than any catapult could. The Masterstroke of Control. Nebuchadnezzar's next move was genius. Instead of executing Jehoiachin, he applied the tactic that had destroyed other nations: mass deportation of the leadership class. He systematically removed 10,000 people, but not random civilians. He specifically took leaders, intellectuals, craftsmen, and soldiers. Everyone who knew how to govern, fight, or build was ripped from Jerusalem. Among the deportees was the prophet Ezekiel, who would later describe Jerusalem's final destruction in vivid detail. The plan was brilliant. Leave only the poor of the land, simple farmers and shepherds who couldn't organize rebellions. Nebuchadnezzar installed Zedekiah, Jehoiachin's uncle, as a puppet king. For 11 years, this strategy worked flawlessly. Jerusalem became a ghost city, governed by a powerless ruler and inhabited only by the poorest citizens. The Babylonian king believed he'd solved the Jerusalem problem forever. The final rebellion. But in 588 BC, Zedekiah committed the blunder of the century. He rebelled against Babylon. What drove a weak king to challenge the world's most powerful empire? Two factors: popular pressure and empty Egyptian promises. When Egyptian forces appeared on the horizon, Jerusalem's people saw salvation. They pressured Zedekiah to break his agreement with Babylon. The puppet king, always weak-willed, gave in to the mob. It was the most expensive mistake in Judah's history. When news of the betrayal reached Nebuchadnezzar, his reaction was explosive. No more agreements, no more vassalage, no more chances. This time, he would come to erase Jerusalem from existence completely. The science of destruction. In January 588 BC, Nebuchadnezzar surrounded Jerusalem with a strategy that had never failed. But this siege was different. He wanted total extermination. The Babylonian king built a wall around the entire city, creating a city within a city. Nothing could enter or leave. The siege wasn't chaotic. It was an engineering masterpiece. Nebuchadnezzar divided his army into 24-hour shifts. While one section attacked the walls, another rested. Pressure was constant, relentless, never-ending. The most brilliant part: Nebuchadnezzar wasn't in a hurry. Time worked in his favor. Jerusalem had food for months. He had supplies for years. Jerusalem had low morale. His soldiers were motivated by promised plunder. Every passing week made Jerusalem weaker and Babylon stronger. The weapons of siege. Jerusalem's walls stood 12 feet high and 6 feet thick, impressive fortifications that had resisted attacks for centuries. But Nebuchadnezzar had studied every stone during previous sieges. His engineers had mapped every weak point, every crack, every vulnerable angle. The Babylonian arsenal was devastating. Giant battering rams mounted on mobile towers pounded the gates. Catapults hurled flaming projectiles to keep defenders away from the walls. Specialized miners dug tunnels to undermine foundations. The strategy was mathematical precision. Attack 3 points simultaneously. While rams battered the north gate, sappers undermined the eastern tower's foundation, and catapults maintained constant pressure. Each blow created microfractures, each stone loosened mortar, each day weakened the structure. The impenetrable walls were crumbling slowly, scientifically. The weapon of hunger. Nebuchadnezzar transformed starvation into his most lethal weapon. In the first month, Jerusalem rationed food. By the third month, people ate tree bark. By the sixth month, they boiled leather sandals for soup. But the horror was just beginning. As desperation peaked, the unthinkable happened. Mothers cooked their own children. Families fought over moldy breadcrumbs. Corpses rotted in streets because survivors lacked strength to bury them. Nebuchadnezzar watched everything from his command tower. He knew exactly what was happening inside Jerusalem because he had infiltrated spies among the refugees. The Babylonian king felt no pity. He saw starvation as part of his strategy. When Jerusalem's soldiers became too weak to hold swords, he knew victory was certain. The final breakthrough. After 18 months of agony, on July 18th, 586 BC, the moment Nebuchadnezzar had waited for finally arrived. The wall cracked. Not a dramatic collapse, just a 9-foot breach in the northern wall, wide enough for 10 soldiers to pass through side by side. Jerusalem's guards spotted the breach and screamed warnings, but panic had already taken hold. King Zedekiah attempted desperate defense, but his soldiers were too starved to fight effectively. Many simply dropped their weapons and fled. Babylonian archers were the first through the gap, scaling towers and shooting fleeing defenders. Within 2 hours, organized resistance in Jerusalem had ended. Zedekiah did the only thing left. He ran like a coward. After planning for years, building siege engines for months, and conducting brutal siege for 18 months, Jerusalem had finally fallen. The brutal justice. Nebuchadnezzar forced Zedekiah to witness the unthinkable. First, they brought the king's sons, young princes who would have inherited Judah's throne. Zedekiah begged for their lives, offered gold, promised eternal vassalage. Nebuchadnezzar remained silent and signaled the executioner. The screams echoed throughout the camp, but worse was coming. After executing the sons, Babylonian soldiers killed all captured Judean nobles. It was the complete extinction of Judah's royal lineage. Finally came Zedekiah's punishment. Soldiers burned out his eyes with red-hot iron. The last image Jerusalem's king saw was his children's blood on the ground. Nebuchadnezzar ensured Zedekiah would spend his remaining years blind, forever remembering the moment he lost everything through his betrayal. The temple's destruction. Nebuchadnezzar saved the temple for last intentionally. He wanted to break Israel's soul. Solomon's temple wasn't just a building, it symbolized God dwelling among the Jewish people. Destroying it would prove that Israel's God had abandoned his people. On August 5th, 586 BC, Nebuzaradan, captain of the Babylonian Guard, entered the temple with torches and axes. First, they looted everything valuable. Bronze pillars weighing 30 tons were smashed with giant hammers. Gold vessels, silver cups, and ceremonial objects filled 200 wagons. Then came the moment that shocked even Babylonian soldiers. Nebuzaradan ordered the Holy of Holies burned. The earth's most sacred place became ashes within hours. The fire lasted 3 days. Smoke was visible 50 kilometers away. Jews hiding in distant mountains watched their spiritual center die, knowing an era had ended forever. The complete erasure. For the first time in 1,000 years, Jerusalem stood completely empty. No human voices, no cooking smoke, no children's laughter, only smoldering ruins and wind whistling through broken walls. Nebuchadnezzar's plan had succeeded perfectly. Jerusalem had ceased to exist as a city, nation, and threat. But perhaps the most haunting question remained. Why did the God of Israel allow this to happen to his chosen people? The answer reveals truths about justice, consequences, and divine patience that echo through history to this day. The destruction of Jerusalem wasn't just ancient history, it was a masterclass in strategic warfare, psychological manipulation, and the consequences of political miscalculation. Nebuchadnezzar proved that sometimes the sharpest weapon isn't a sword, but a mind that can turn time, hunger, and fear into instruments of total victory. If this deep dive into biblical history opened your eyes to the brutal realities of ancient warfare, smash that like button and subscribe for more documentaries that bring history's most shocking events to life. What other biblical disasters would you like us to explore next?